Good evening, my dear students. I hope you all are safe at all places and you all are studying hard. You all are preparing for your exams. I also hope that the last chapter, chapter number 2 that we have done is clear. And I think that I can expect that you guys have gone through the questions that were given to you, the descriptive questions, the MCQ and the case scenario, right? So, with a very positive note, and assuming that you will be giving me your 100% concentration, let us now start today's topic, which is audit documentation and audit evidence. So, first we'll be starting with audit documentation and then we'll go through audit evidence. And students, this chapter is very important. See, we'll be covering 9 essays in this chapter, and otherwise also practically this chapter is very important. Your questions like, ma'am, what is NTE of audit procedures? And what are your common questions, ma'am? What is assertion? Ma'am, what are tests of controls? Substantive procedures. All these queries will be solved today. So, let us start with audit documentation. And quickly, as I always tell you, in order to understand a term, we first need to divide it and understand what the individual terms mean. So what is meant by audit? Now it is clear to you, and I hope, since we were revising this definition in our last chapter also, so I expect that now you have learned this definition, what is audit. Now quickly, students, please tell me, what do you understand by the term documentation? Quickly, I need answers. What is meant by documentation? What is meant by the term documentation? So meanwhile, I get the answers. I tell you. See, the synonym of this word is record. A record. And if you look at the dictionary meaning, it means material that gives official information. If you look at the dictionary meaning, it will be material that gives official information, and the synonym is record, right? Students, as you have seen in, so far we have done essay 300, essay 315 and essay 320. And if you remember, in all these essays, there were some documentation requirements. I just read. There were some documentation requirements, like in SC 300, if you remember, in chapter number 2, we have done that the auditor will document the overall audit strategy, the audit plan, and if in case he revises it, he changes the plan, then a documentation of that also along with reasons. Then in SC 320, let's say, we have seen that the auditor will document the materiality, the performance materiality, and any revision. So these are the specific documentation requirements which have been given in each and every essay, right? However, SA 230, which is the first essay of this chapter, the name of the essay is Audit Documentation. This gives the responsibility of the auditor with respect to maintaining the audit documentation throughout the audit. What I have said is, these essays, and in fact each and every essay that we'll be studying, it will have a small provision with respect to documentation. Those are the specific requirements that essay 300 says that, what is the name of the essay? Planning and audit of financial statement, essay 300. So the documentation requirement in essay 300 says that particularly with respect to planning, what all documentation you have to maintain. 315 says, what is the name of the essay? Identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. And it says that you need to maintain documentation of the risk assessed, the procedures that you are going to perform, and the knowledge that you have obtained, and in case any revision of the risk assessment is there, that also. Similarly, 320 gives the specific documentation requirement with respect to material, right? Essay 230, as each and every essay contains the auditor's responsibility. So what does essay 230 contains? It contains the responsibility of the auditor to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statement. So essay 230, it says that, Mr. Auditor, listen to me. You have a responsibility to maintain, to prepare an audit documentation, and not just for planning or materiality or for particular respects. According to essay 230, the auditor has to maintain the audit documentation for an audit of financial statement. So whether the auditor is performing risk assessment procedures, or he is establishing the overall audit strategy, or he is planning, or whether he is performing the audit procedures like your further audit procedures, or whether he is drawing certain conclusions. That is the basis of his opinion. So essay 230 says, Mr. Auditor, maintain a documentation of all these things. Specifically for overall audit strategy, what is to be maintained as audit documentation is given in essay 300. But essay 230 says that with respect to each and every aspect, whatever you are doing during the conduct of an audit, or whatever you are thinking, even your professional judgments, whatever you are thinking, please document it. Right? Clear so far? So, documentation is not only required for planning or overall audit strategy. However, as per essay 230, it is required throughout the audit. Clear? Now, the auditor, suppose essay 230 is telling this to the auditor. Now our auditor says, okay, that is fine, that I have a responsibility, and the essay 230 has said that such responsibility is contained in what? In me. That as per essay 230, the auditor has a responsibility to maintain the audit documentation. Now the auditor asks, now I have understood, auditor said that, okay, I have understood that I need to maintain audit documentation. But please tell me in detail, what is audit documentation? What is the definition of audit documentation? Students, this is a very important definition, and you will see how you will be able to learn this definition right now. Tell me, in fact, essay 230 says, auditor, tell me what all things do you do when you are conducting the audit of an organization? The auditor says, see, I perform certain audit procedures. SA-230 says then, the auditor says, based on this, I get certain audit evidence. Okay. And then auditor says, based on the audit evidence, I reach certain conclusions. So what am I writing? That what an auditor does when he is conducting the audit of the financial statement. So he is performing audit procedures. He is based on these procedures, he is obtaining the audit evidence, and based on this evidence, he is drawing certain conclusions. And SA-230 has a definition of audit documentation which says that audit documentation is a record of audit documentation is a record of audit procedures are always performed. So audit procedures performed. Audit evidence is always obtained. So audit evidence is obtained, and conclusions the auditor reached. See how just conclusions the auditor reached. So what is audit documentation? As I have told you, whatever the auditor is doing throughout the audit, that a record of all that thing is audit documentation. So we know that first of all, auditor performs audit procedures. Based on that, he obtains audit evidence, and based on that evidence, auditor draws certain conclusions. And what is the definition? The definition is derived from these three keywords only. The definition says audit documentation, and write it here, is a record of audit procedures performed, audit evidences obtained, and the conclusions the auditor reached. The conclusions the auditor reached. Right? Let me just explain this to you with the help of an example. With the help of an example. Suppose, I'll write it here. Suppose auditors had to get some debtors balance confirmation. They are checking some debtor balance, right? Now, what audit procedures will they perform? Quickly, I need answers. Camera is shaking. Just a minute. I'll just see. I hope the camera problem is solved. Now it's fine. Okay? So, if the auditor has to check the debtors balance, quickly tell me what audit procedures you will perform as an auditor. What audit procedures will you perform as an auditor with respect to debtors balance? Let's say you inquire the management. You inquire the management that management, please tell me what all accounts are there which totals your debtors balance. Then you may start the process of getting external confirmation from the debtors. What is external confirmation? We'll be reading this in detail we'll be reading this in detail, external confirmation, in this chapter only. But as of now, I'll tell you that when the auditor, he himself sends a request, confirmation request to the debtors that please send me what is the balance of my client in your books, that is called external confirmation. So one of the audit procedures is external confirmation, and we are discussing in order to check a debtor's balance, what audit procedures an auditor will perform. So we have seen he'll inquire the management as to management, please tell me what all accounts are there with respect to debtors. Then we may ask for addresses or email IDs of the debtors. Why? Because we need to send in the confirmation request. Then we may perform certain calculations in order to see like what all transactions were there with respect to debtors during the year. What all sales were there, we may perform certain calculations. So what are these? These are all your audit procedures, correct? Now, based on these, you have obtained certain audit evidence. What can be those audit evidence? When you have sent the external confirmation request, you must be receiving the response. So that letter which you have received from the debtors is what? External confirmation request. So one can be this. When you inquire the management about what all accounts are there in debtor balances, you might have received certain ledgers of debtors, and there must be some calculation results. So what are all those? All those are, yes, students are saying we can collect the invoices, we can see the trial balance, and then they are saying that bill books, yes, you are right. So all those will become what? Audit procedure. See, when you are checking the bill book now, what you are doing, you are inspecting. So I can write another audit procedure, inspection. When you are looking at a document, it is called inspection, which is again one of the audit procedures. So by performing these audit procedures, the auditor will get these evidences, and based on these evidences, the auditor will draw a conclusion. Let's say he says that the debtor balance, the confirmation, the ledgers, the bank statements all tally with respect to what? Debtors. And he concluded that debtor balance are correctly, appropriately accounted for and disclosed in the books of accounts. So we saw, based on certain audit procedures, certain performed, audit evidences were received, and based on that, the auditor reached certain conclusion, and he need to maintain a documentation of all these, which constitutes audit documentation. Now, what is the purpose? Why such documentation has been maintained? See, suppose you have conducted the audit of XYZ Limited, and later on, suppose I question you, I ask you that what is the proof that you have conducted the audit of so and so client in an effective, efficient and timely manner? You can always see, if you orally just discuss it with me, I did this, I did that, my team did that, that won't be sufficient. I may not trust you. However, when I go through something in writing and in a systematic way, that all the audit procedures are being documented, all the audit evidences have been documented, and the conclusion have been documented, then this will provide a basis that for what? For your conclusion. Also, it will provide a proof and evidence that you have planned and performed the audit in an as required by the essays or as required by legal or regulatory requirements. Clear? So far we have just understood, and I expect that you are able to learn at least the keywords of this definition, which is audit procedures, audit evidence and conclusions. And where is this definition given? This is given by essay 230. So clear so far? Clear? Now our CA, he asked the audit, the SC230. Please tell me something more about this audit documentation. So SC230 has another provision, which is what is the objective of such audit documentation? Why such audit documentation is required? What is the objective? What is the objective? See, the objective is that if an auditor maintains the audit documentation, it will serve two purposes. It will provide basis for two things. It will provide basis for two things. First is the basis for auditor's conclusion. On which opinion is based. See the definition that we have learned. What is it? Audit procedures performed, audit evidences obtained, and conclusions the auditor reached. And based on that conclusion, only opinion is formed. Right? So, all this provide for basis of this conclusion on which the auditor's opinion has been based, right? Secondly, it provides you an evidence or basis that audit was planned and performed as per, say, SA or any other legal or regulatory requirements. This is regulatory, right? So what is the objective? Why the auditor is making such audit documentation? Why is he devoting his valuable resource, his team and time for maintaining the audit documentation? Is that because such documentation will provide a basis for auditor's conclusion. See, in our example, the auditor concluded that the debtors' balance are correctly accounted for in the books of accounts. On what basis? On these evidence. And how will he obtain these evidence? Based on these procedures. Same way, it is a proof. Like I told you, if I question the auditor, that auditor, I don't think that you planned the audit in an effective manner, or whether your audit was planned or not. This is always an evidence that look at this. I have all the things written in writing, what my overall audit strategy was, what my audit plan was, what were my risk assessment procedures, what were my further audit procedures, and how I reached at the conclusions. So it is an evidence that the audit was planned and performed as per the requirements. What requirements? Standards, legal or regulatory requirements. Students, you are correctly saying that to safeguard the auditor that he conducted in accordance with applicable. Right? So I hope so far is clear. Now another topic is there which is almost similar. Now if I ask you, tell me what is the nature of audit documentation? What is the nature of audit documentation? You might say it has a nature of providing evidence. The nature is such that this audit documentation provides an evidence. Evidence about what? Evidence about these two things only. Evidence about the basis for auditor's conclusion and evidence that the audit was planned and performed as per the standards, legal and regulatory requirement. So clear so far? You want me to repeat this topic? Janvi is saying. So I'll just repeat it. See, what is the objective? Why the auditor should spend his time his team, that is his resources for maintaining the audit documentation. See, maintaining audit documentation will require time. It is an additional responsibility on the auditor. But why? Because it has an objective. What is the objective? The objective is that later on, when you have to see why you have concluded something. For example, we took the example of debtors. Suppose next year you are conducting the audit of same company and you are looking at the same debtor. Now, according to you, suppose last year you concluded here that some 10,000 entry, there is a difference of 10,000 with respect to sales return. You discuss with management and management accordingly pass the rectification entry, right? Now, this year you again looked at the same ledger, and now see, based on these, that you must have written last year now that management was asked to pass this entry and management accordingly passed. So based on this, you are able to know what is the basis of the conclusion drawn last year. Same way, in case, as I told you, if I question or say if ICAI asks the CA firm that whether your audit was planned or performed, you will see there are provisions of peer review. We'll be discussing this today. So this is an evidence that the audit was performed in a planned and performed way. How? Because you have maintained a documentation, a record of everything that you performed during the audit. And in fact, students, you will see that even our professional judgment, what we are thinking, we will document that also. Clear, Janvi? Geeta, you are right, but I'll just explain this to you in detail later on, today only. Okay? So I hope all the queries are done. And nature, as I told you, audit documentation has a nature of providing evidence. Evidence with respect to what? These two things only. Okay? Now the auditor says, SA 230, you have said that there is an additional responsibility of audit documentation on me, and I have understood that this documentation is nothing but a record of whatever I am doing. Audit procedures performed, audit evidences obtained, and conclusions the auditor reached. Okay? Then auditor says that I have understood that there are two objectives. That is, it provides a basis for conclusion, and that it is an evidence that audit was planned and performed as per SA's legal and regulatory requirement, and it has a nature of providing evidence. But the auditor asks the SA, please tell me, is it helpful to me in any other way also? The SA says, see, if you will maintain the audit documentation now, so Mr. Auditor, it will help you in a number of ways. I understand, SA 230 says, I understand that you have to devote extra time, you have to devote your team members towards maintaining this audit documentation, but it will serve a number of purposes to you. The auditor asked SA 230 to discuss all those in detail. Now, we'll discuss them one by one. So first is, what is an engagement team? Now you know. The team that is conducting the audit. So it helps in planning and performing the audit. This is simple. Suppose I am going with my team to conduct the audits of, say, financial year 2021. See, a general practice is, suppose I was the auditor, my team was conducting the audit last year also. So general practices will just look at the last year audit documentation, right? So if a proper audit documentation was maintained last year, it will help this year to plan and perform the audit. And otherwise also, if I look at the audit documentation of this year, which I have maintained so far, it will help me and my team, like I am the engagement partner, it will help me and my team, the engagement team, to see what all has been performed, by whom it has been performed, and what were the results. So it will help in planning and performing. And as you see, you remember we have done audit program also. It helps in DSR, direction, supervision and review of what? Engagement team work. It helps in direction, supervision and review of the engagement team work. This is the second point. Third point, see, when everyone is documenting what they have done and they are putting their initials, and if you remember, I have shared an example of audit program with you. I'll just show it to you again. This we have seen last time. Now students, just try to understand. We have seen what audit procedures, and look at this. The auditor, just a minute. The audit team, the engagement team will be mentioning the work paper reference here. That suppose I'll just take you through substantive procedures. Suppose they compared the current year ratio of wages and salaries with the previous year. They'll write the page numbers here, 42, say 100, right? And if you have seen, the name of the person who has done this and who has reviewed this is also here. And each of the working paper is initialed. So tell me, will it help the engagement partner to see who is accountable for the work? Suppose as we just saw the example of salaries and wages. So he'll be able to see who is accountable with respect to salaries and wages. So these are the three purposes that an audit documentation will help. And in order to learn engagement teams, direction, supervision and review of their work, it will help in order to see who is accountable out of the engagement team for the work, right? Now, next part. As I've just told you, that it is a general practice that whenever we start any audit, we just look at the previous year audit documentation if we have done the audit of that client. So it will help in future document. And along with this, a line is written that retaining a record of matters of continuing significance. Okay? Suppose last year, please listen to this example. Suppose last year, me and my team conducted the audit of some pharmaceutical company, right? So we have taken the article of association, the memorandum of association, a license copy, the contract copies of that company, and we have kept it in our file. Okay? See, these are the matters of continuing significance. That license was valid last year also, it is valid this year also. Suppose, let me take another example. Suppose there is some construction company and they give their property on rent. So there are rent agreements which are applicable the next year also. So I will not ask the client to provide me such document again and again. I'll just maintain a documentation of that, and whatever documentation with respect to contracts, the license, the memorandum of association, article of association I have obtained from the client, I can always use that in the current year. So it will help in future audit, and the line that has been written is retaining a record of matters of continuing significance. I hope this is clear, right? And 2 points are related to inspection. Student, you have done standard of quality control 1 in your chapter number 1, whereby you have seen that the audit firm should have the policies and procedures with respect to monitoring of the quality of the work done by the firm. So, see, when any review of the work is to be done, as I told you, that orally if the partner is saying that I have done this or that, it will not have that weightage as compared to when he has the entire documentation stating all the audit procedures, all the audit evidences and the conclusions. So it helps in review and inspection of the work as per standard of quality control 1. And last point is, I hope this is visible. Yes. Last point is, in case of any external inspection, see, why is this inspection being carried on? Because we as audit firms, we need to maintain the quality of our work, right? We are giving an expert opinion on the financial statements of clients. So we need to give an expert opinion and the quality should have been maintained. So internally, if the audit firm is conducting the review or inspection of the partners, then also this audit documentation plays an important role. Same way, if any external inspection, if you remember, I gave you example of peer review. Suppose our institute, ICAI, it gets the work of any CA firm being reviewed by another CA firm. So that is an external inspection. So in that case also this audit documentation will help, right? So we have seen that though auditor has to spend time and resources on audit documentation, but it will help him in a number of ways. How? It will help the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. It will help the engagement team direction, supervision and review of their work. It will help to see who is accountable out of the engagement team for the work given. Then it will help for future audit and we can record the matters of continuing significance. As per standard on quality control 1, if any review or inspection is to be done, then this acts as an evidence because we have seen what is the nature of audit documentation. It provides the evidence. What evidence? That the audit was planned and performed as per essays and other requirements. And last, if any external inspection is to be done, this is an example, then also this audit documentation will be of great help. So I hope topic till now is clear. Topics are clear. Clear? See, Manoj is asking, can auditor keep essential documents of the client? What if client refuses to give the stats? See, normally, Manoj, this doesn't happen that management is refusing to give something. Okay? And what is essential documents like copies of memorandum, article, or last year financial statements or contracts? Auditor needs them in order to conduct the audit. So the client as such will not refuse. And in case it happens, in extreme cases, auditor say the client says, "I'll not provide this information," then the weapon that the auditor always has is audit report. He can always mention in his audit report that he is unable to perform this or he is unable to do that, right? So before starting the next topic, I'll quickly look at your queries. Then I'll start with the next topic. Meanwhile, students, there is an illustration on page number 1. Please go through it. I'll just, let us just quickly go through the module. I hope this screen is visible. So what is audit documentation? See, SA 230. And what is the name? The name is very simple. It is what? Audit documentation, right? It deals with auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements. And as I've told you, the specific documentation requirements of others' essay do not restrict the application of this essay. Laws, regulation may establish additional documentation requirements. That is, there may be additional documentation requirement. However, this essay says that throughout the auditor has to maintain the audit documentation. And what is it? a very simple definition: record of audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusions the auditor reached. Very simple definition and very important also. What is the objective? It provides a sufficient appropriate record of basis of auditors. What is this? Basis of auditor's report and evidence that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with SCs. What is the nature? As I've told you, it has a nature of providing evidence. Evidence with respect to what? These two topics are almost same. So you can mark. Okay? So it has evidence of providing evidence with respect to auditor's basis and evidence that it was planned and performed. Now, what is the purpose? Now, again, a learning technique. See, these 3 points are related to what? Engagement team. Helping in plan and perform. DSR, direct supervise and review. DRS लिख दिया मैंने, wait. Direction, supervision and review of their work and who is accountable. Then record of matters of continuing significance for future audits and reviews and inspection with respect to standard of quality control 1 and external inspection. So please go through this illustration. Meanwhile, I just look at the queries. Ramakrishna, minutes, you will see. Ramakrishna has asked a question, will minutes also act as audit evidence or these will be provided by the client? Yes, you will see that it is one of the important audit evidences, an important part of audit documentation. Tanushi, last point says, which I have discussed, is related to external inspection. See, for internal inspection was what? Your standard of quality control 1. External is what? For example, externally, that is ICAI. It conducts asks a CA firm to conduct the peer review for another CA firm. So externally, the reviewers are coming to inspect the quality. Na? So that was the example. So in that case also audit documentation will act as an evidence. So students, please tell me if it is clear. Students, kya naam hai? Shrishti, I'll just tell you later on what is audit completion checklist. We'll see. Okay. So what is the question? The new team member of auditors of Extremely Vibrant Limited was of the view that audit documentation does not help. Students, please read the question carefully. In planning the audit, whether audit documentation has any relation with regard to planning. Audit documentation helps in planning the audit of a company in proper manner and also helps in conducting. From where has this question come? From this. Assisting the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. So I hope this is clear. Okay. Now let us start with the next topic. Now auditor says, okay, essay 230, you have told me about the meaning, the objective, the nature and the purpose. Please tell me, is there any standard form, content and extent of audit documentation? Form, content and extent. Form, content and extent, like how to maintain the audit documentation. Is there any format for that? What content it should include and to what extent I need to maintain the audit documentation. See, essay 230 says, you do one thing. You maintain the audit documentation of your audit procedures performed, audit evidences obtained and conclusions that you have reached in such a way that listen to this carefully. It says that maintain it in such a way that an experienced auditor having no previous connection with this client, he should be able to understand what audit procedures you perform and what evidences you have obtained. Let me just explain this to you with the help of an example, then it will be more clear. For example, client is XYZ Limited and the auditor is CA Ram. Okay, Ram and his team. And another auditor is there, CA Sham. Okay, he is not the auditor of XYZ Limited. He is not having any connection with XYZ Limited. Okay, and CA Ram is the auditor of XYZ Limited. So SA 230 says that CA Ram, tell your team to maintain a documentation in such a way that CA Sham, who though he is an experienced auditor, he knows about the standards on auditing, he knows about all the requirements of the auditing subject. That is, he is an experienced auditor. He has an experience in conducting the audit, though he has never conducted the audit of XYZ Limited. Such person, we are not saying that a layman should be able to understand your audit procedures and your audit evidences. We are saying that CA Ram, you and your team should maintain the audit documentation of XYZ Limited in such a way that an experienced auditor who has an experience of conducting audit, though he is not having any previous connection with the client. Example, CA Sham, he is an auditor, he knows how to conduct the audit, he knows in and out about audit, though he has never conducted the audit of XYZ Limited. But after looking at your audit documentation, after inspecting your audit documentation, he should be able to understand what audit procedures you have performed, what evidences you have obtained. So please don't maintain it in a haphazard way or in a way that only you can understand it. Okay? You or your team can understand it. Please maintain it in a way so that any experienced auditor who is having no previous connection with this audit, if such a person, example CA Sham in our case, if he looks at the audit documentation maintained by CA Ram, CA Sham should be able to understand what audit procedures have been performed and what audit evidences have been obtained. Why? Because audit documentation is nothing but a record of these only, na? So maintain it in such a way that experienced auditor, though having no previous connection with the client, he is able to understand what work you have done. Clear? Quickly answer, is this clear? That a person who has knowledge of the audit, chartered accountant who has experience of auditing, audit, though he is not connected with this client, but maintain the documentation in such a way that such person is able to understand what audit procedures you have performed and what audit evidences you have obtained. Clear? This topic is left. We have just done the first line. So it says that SA 230 says that please maintain the audit documentation in such a way such that an experienced auditor having no previous connection with your client, he should be able to understand what all things. after looking at your audit documentation, he should be able to understand the NTE of audit procedures performed. I'll explain what is NTE in detail just a minute. So he should be able to understand the NTE of audit procedures. Plus, he should be able to understand your audit evidences. Like he should be able to understand that acha, you have performed inquiry, you have called for external confirmation, you have calculated something, or you have inspected something. He should be able to do that. Right? Plus, he should be able to understand the audit evidences. That acha, this is a confirmation. Okay, this is a bank balance bank statement, right? A balance confirmation from bank. Acha, this is a loan agreement. He should be able to understand it. Don't put it in a haphazard way that only you can understand. Put it in a way that an experienced auditor having no previous connection, he should be able to understand the NT of audit procedures, the audit evidences, and it says also you must have come across certain significant matters, certain significant, important matters with respect to which you must have drawn certain conclusions, applying your conclusions, applying your professional judgment. And if you remember, I told you in the very beginning that you will see that the auditor has to maintain a documentation of his professional judgment also. If he has concluded something by applying his professional judgment, see how will this CA Sham in our example, how will we know why such conclusions have been made? Unless and until CA Ram puts it in writing that according to me, this is the law, according to me, this has actually happened in this case, and according to me, this should be the conclusion. So unless and until he puts everything in writing, how will CA Sham know what professional judgment he has exercised while concluding with respect to significant matters? Okay? I'll give you an example of significant matter. Let's say certain fraud. Example, any fraud was detected last year. Okay? So what conclusion the auditor reached and what was his professional judgment? Or any related party transactions were there. So this is a significant matter. Significant matter are what? Which poses a significant risk. Important, right? So, how you responded, how the conclusions were reached, what was your professional judgment? Please maintain a documentation of that also. Clear so far? So, with respect to form, content and extent, student, this is a very important topic and this has been added this year. So, form, content and extent may 230 says that Mr. Auditor, please maintain the audit documentation in such a way that an experienced auditor, though he is not having any previous connection with this audit, he is able to understand by just going through your documentation three things. What? First is the NTE, nature, time, extent of the audit procedures that was performed, the audit evidences that you obtained, and in case any significant matter was found, what were the conclusions and what professional judgment have you applied? What professional judgment have you applied? Clear? Clear? Now, this essay further says that listen, with respect to the NTE of audit procedures, the nature, time and extent of audit procedures, please also mention the identifying characteristics of the item that you have tested. The identifying characteristics of the item you have tested. For example, I as an auditor, I have performed the audit procedure, say with respect to certain related party transaction. Okay? So in order to see whether that transaction is at arm's length price, I performed certain calculations. So this essay says that maintain the identifying characters, write over it. What is the special feature of that transaction? So it says identifying characteristics. Also, please write who performed the audit procedures along with the date. And please also write who reviewed those procedures along with the date. Simple. Simple. So what we have done so far is that is an experienced auditor who is having experience of conducting the audit. Any XYZ, it can be anyone. Who is not having the connection with this client, he should be able to understand the entity of audit procedures and what all is included. He said with respect to audit procedures. Now, please also mention any specific important characteristics of the item that you have identified. For example, I perform an audit procedure. I call for a balance confirmation with respect to, say, ABC Limited. And it is a related party. So on the top of it, I may write related party. Any person who is looking at the documentation, he'll see, acha, it is a related party. Okay, it is a significant matter. Okay? Then who performed along with the date and who reviewed along with the date. Clear? I'll take the queries. We try to understand this. Okay? Then it says that with respect to your significant matters, now, please document your discussions. How to document discussion? See, you discuss something with the management. You can always document it that management said this, then we said this. Then management replied like this. So you can always draft the minutes of the meeting and you can document it. So the discussion. Then it says also write when and with whom such matters were discussed. When and with whom such matters were discussed. Clear? Then it says if you find any inconsistency, suppose you were thinking that the provision for bad debt should have been made at 7%. Last year it was 5%. But you found out that it is 10%. So there is an inconsistency with what you were thinking. So please also document how you address the same. How you address the same. So students, if you'll see, it is nothing but whatever an auditor comes across when he's conducting the audit, whatever professional judgment he's applying, in case of inconsistency, how he resolved it, how he discussed the significant matters, with whom he discussed, when he discussed, who performed the audit procedure on what date, who reviewed on what date, and what were the identifying characteristics with respect to any important transaction, the auditor needs to maintain the documentation. So such should be the form, content and extent that an experienced auditor. I am getting the query, ma'am, what is experienced auditor? See, in this case, Vanshika and Shivendra and Shrishti, see, we are not saying that an experienced auditor will come and he'll review or he'll look at the books, at the audit documentation. What I'm saying is, it should be such that in case another CA who is having the experience of conducting the audit, though he is not aware about the company. So maintain it in such a way that after reading your audit documentation, he should be able to understand all these things. He should be able to understand all these things. Let's take an example. Suppose any external inspection is to be done, any peer review is to be done with respect to, say, ABC and Associates. It is a firm, audit firm, with respect to its work. The peer review, external inspection is to be done. In such a case, see, the person who is coming to review the quality, they are not aware about the client now, but they know how audit is conducted. So they should be able to understand ki, acha, you have done it in a planned manner. They should be able to understand that, okay, these were the audit procedures which are as per SA. These were the audit evidence based on which conclusions were drawn and the significant matters were discussed in such a way. So as such, there is no, criteria for an auditor. Basically, we are saying he is having an experience in the audit of how to conduct the audit. Yes, students, Mansi is saying, ma'am, will his team also do the work, because this is too much work for a single person? Obviously, when any audit is conducted, the entire team engages itself in the audit. That is why the name is engagement team. So the engagement partner, he will not maintain all this documentation, obviously, because he is reviewing, he is directing, he is supervising. The persons, the article assistants who are actually working on the field, they are actually conducting the audit. They have the papers, they have done the audit, they have done audit procedures, they have done audit evidences, so they'll be maintaining an audit file. Suppose I am the engagement partner. I call one of the article clerks and ask him, "Acha, is client ke case mein what all have you done?" So take a situation where he is telling me that, "Sir, I have done this, I have done this, I have done this." And take another situation where he's telling me, "But I have everything in writing and I can see his initials and papers that he had taken from the client." So the second situation is better, na? Anushka, please send in your query again. Okay? And inconsistency. For example, I just gave you an example. Please listen to this again. One query is there, ma'am. What is meant by inconsistency? Suppose after reviewing, examining all the debtors, the auditors feel that last year provision for doubtful debt was 5%. This year, it should be 7%. Okay? However, when he actually looks at the provision for doubtful debt, it comes out to be, say, 13 or 14%. So this actual figure is inconsistent. It is different from his thinking. He was thinking it should have been 7%. However, it is what? 14%. So this is an inconsistency. Now, how he addressed? He discussed with the management, he inquired management, that management, see, according to me, this should have been 7%, the provision. However, it is 14% in your books, which is inconsistent, different from what I was thinking. Management said that, auditor, what happened is one of our major debtor, the debtor was near the coastal areas of Uttarakhand, and on account of cyclone, their complete factories and everything has vanished, and we believe that that amount is now not recoverable. Okay? So that is why we have made 100% provision for that debtor. So I, as an auditor, I was convinced, and that is how I addressed. So this communication with the management, I need to document it. The minutes of the discussion, I need to document. Okay, Anushka, please send in your query again. Yes, Shrishti has written it very correctly. It means that documentation has to be in a uniform basis so that anyone says, she means an experienced auditor, they are able to understand it, they are able to review it. Inconsistency I have told you. ठीक है, उसके बाद experienced auditor का I have also told you. ठीक है, so far I think the doubts are clear. ठीक है, तो अभी students, this topic is not yet complete. It says 230 is telling the auditor that with respect to form, content and extent, maintain the documentation in such a way that as experienced auditor having no previous connection with the client, he should be able to understand the entry of audit procedures, the audit evidence and significant matters, what conclusions were there, and the professional judgment that you have applied. And with respect to NT, also mention the identifying characteristics. I gave you an example of related party. Suppose you have called for an external confirmation from a related party. Just mention above that this is the related party. Who performed the date, who reviewed at the date. Also, with respect to these significant matters, discussions, please also note down the discussions. You may ask, ma'am, how to note down the discussions? Then minutes of those discussions can always be documented. When and with whom such discussions were made, and in case of any inconsistency, I gave you an example of provision for doubtful debts, how the same was addressed. So clear? Clear? So, so this is clear. Okay? Now, SC 230 further says that these are the general guidelines. Okay? Further, Mr. Auditor, please note that there are certain factors that affect the form, content and extent of your documentation. There are certain factors that affect the form, content and extent. What form, in what form, what should be the content and what extent. First is the size and complexity of the organization. See, obviously, if it is a very big organization, your audit documentation will be a big file, a big box file. Same way, complexity. Suppose there are mergers and acquisitions during the year. There are certain related party transactions, certain transfer pricing transactions. So obviously, in case of complex transaction, in case of a huge size, more audit procedures will be performed, more audit evidences will be performed, and accordingly, the audit documentation will be more complex and bigger in size. Okay. Second, first is what? Size and complexity. Nature of audit procedures performed. Obviously, whatever audit procedures you are performing, your form, content and extent will depend upon that. If you are performing, say, external confirmations, you will be compiling the external confirmation, what requests you have sent, what replies you have received. If you are doing certain calculations, external confirmation are all what? Audit procedures. So accordingly, your audit documentation will be like that. Identified risk of material misstatement. If this is high, in SC 315, you identified and assessed the risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. And if that is high, so you will perform more procedures, more audit evidences, then more documentation. Significance of audit evidence. Significance of audit evidence. Suppose you have an audit evidence that a fraud is been done in the company. So you will work more and more with respect to that fraud. You will do more procedures. You will have more audit evidence. You will have more audit documentation. Next point is nature of exception identified. Same. If you have identified certain fraud exception, then it will be what? More audit procedures, more audit documentation. And last is sixth, I'm writing it here. And the methods and tools that you are using to conduct the audit, it depends upon that, right? So this was our topic, the form, content and extent of audit documentation, whereby earlier the SC 230 contained the provision that the auditor needs to maintain audit documentation in a manner. However, there are certain factors which affect the form, content and extent, and these are the factors. These factors are very simple, and yes, they are also very important. Okay? So with this, we have done this topic, form, content and extent of audit documentation. I'll quickly just summarize it. The auditor asks SC 230, please tell me the form, content and extent of the audit documentation. SC 230 says that maintain it in such a way that an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit, he should be able to understand the NTE of the audit procedures performed, the audit evidences and your significant matters, the conclusions you reached, and in reaching those conclusions, what professional judgment have you applied. Okay? Then it says, and listen to me auditor, with respect to NT of audit procedures, please also highlight the identifying characteristics. Please also mention who performed the audit procedure and when, who reviewed and when. Okay? With respect to the significant matter, please also see that what were the nature of discussions, when it was done and with whom. And if you have found any inconsistency, please also document how you have addressed that inconsistency. And documentation in the way I have told you, but there are certain factors that affect the form, content and extent. And these are size and complexity. More next topic, which says, Acha, meanwhile, please send me the answer to the next topic. What, according to you, are the examples of audit documentation? Please also tell me whether audit program is an audit documentation. And Anushka, chapter number 2, one topic was left. I'll be taking at the end of the class. Don't worry. Okay? I didn't forget, Anushka, I'll be taking it at the end. Mohammed Hamza, if there is any disagreement between the auditor and management, then they can always discuss. And if the auditor feels that the management is not agreeing to the auditor, then as I've told you, the weapon that is available to the auditor is his audit report. He can always give the opinion accordingly. Everything is mentioned. So in all that, the article as such never forgets, and the auditor will always have the time to review the work. In fact, he should have the time because you have seen in SC 220 a little bit that you have done in chapter number 1, that it is auditor's responsibility to maintain whether the ethical requirements have been met. As per standard on quality control 1, it is the engagement partner's responsibility to maintain the quality of the work. So since the auditor is using the assistance of his article clerks, he has delegated the work, but ultimately he is responsible for the work, so he will definitely review the work. So I hope all the queries are done. So students, last 5 minutes, students are asking me to repeat. There was some video problem. So I have just looked at the queries only. Okay? So now I asked you the question that whether audit program is an example of audit documentation. So many students are saying yes. Prajakta, Bhuvneshwari. They are saying yes. Okay? So what are the examples of audit documentation? See, audit program. Whatever analysis you are doing, what is issues memoranda? Issues memorandum. Whatever issues you have identified, a summary of that. Memorandum is what? Summary or a report. So that is what? That is a example of audit documentation. Then summaries of significant matters. That is also what? Your example of audit documentation. Then checklist. I have got number of questions on checklist. I'll discuss it. And the correspondences, that is email. Okay? So all these are examples of your documentation. I would like to show the audit program again to you. See, if you can see this audit program, see, it has all the details. Whatever audit procedures were performed, right? And see the reference of all the documentation. Who reviewed, when they were reviewed. So this is such an important audit documentation, right? Now, what is checklist? I'll just show, see, what is checklist? Checklist, for example, the team gets a checklist that this is the information that you need to have. Whether you have general ledger, the team will take care. And suppose it is said by whom? The name of that person. It may have a column of what? Date also or initials. Whether you have taken year-end trial balance, schedule of say whatever is this, grant agreements, whether you have taken this list of board of directors, whether you have taken this list of members of audit committee if applicable, minutes of the meeting. One student was asking whether they'll provide the minutes or not. Okay? So depreciation schedules, copies of any documentation related to donated fixed assets, reconciliations, list of year-end accounts payable, account expenses. So what is a checklist? A list of things that you need to do, and you will keep on ticking it. I hope this is clear. I hope this is clear. And the dictionary meaning of checklist is checklist. A list of things that you must do. So basically, a checklist is provided to the team that you need to obtain all these documents. You need to tally all these balances. So whether you have done it, they will keep on ticking it. Checklist, right? So clear? What are the examples? Then another important point is, if you remember, when I was discussing the purpose, I told you that with respect to future audits, some of the documents or records of continuing significance. So it says that documentation will include the entity's record of any contract, any agreement, that is also your documentation. But what will not be included in documentation is any superseded. What is superseded? Any superseded documentation, that is any document that has been removed or taken place by. What does that mean? Taken place over by something. What does that mean? For example, I am conducting the audit and one of the article assistants, he is checking the depreciation schedule. He calculated the depreciation, he made the depreciation schedule, and in the first go, there was some mistake. So he cancelled that depreciation schedule and he again made a depreciation schedule. So the earlier depreciation schedule was removed and replaced by a new schedule. That means the earlier depreciation is a superseded documentation. That is a paper which has been taken place by some other paper. So obviously now the rough calculations, or suppose it happens now you have written, you have taken the printout and then you saw there was some error, maybe some typographical error, some spelling mistake or anything like that. So you will remove that sheet. Now, confused thodi na karna that you will keep that sheet also. You will save the next sheet also, which you have, where you have corrected those errors. So whatever errors related or maybe your rough works, those are what? Superseded documents. So that are not included in your audit documentation. So one of the MCQs questions can be, what all will be included in audit documentation? I'll say first is audit program. A, audit program. B, issue memorandum. C, superseded documents. And D, checklist. So what is not to be included in audit documentation is the superseded documents having any typographical error or any rough calculations. So very simple topic, clear? Clear? So abhi tak SA 230 has told the auditor. I'll break here after I just summarize whatever we have done so far. So SA 230 told about the definition to the auditor. Definition of audit documentation, that is, it is a record of audit procedures performed, audit evidences obtained and conclusions the auditor reached. And the SA number is SA 230 and the name is Audit Documentation. Okay. Then it told that the objective is that it should provide an evidence of the basis of the conclusion and evidence that the audit was planned and performed as per SA legal and regulatory requirement. And what is the nature? Nature is the same, that it provides evidence with respect to these 2 points. Then auditor asked, will it help me? Yes, the SA said that for engagement team, it will help them to plan and perform, for DSR, direction supervision review, and for your direction supervision review. And third point is accountable. Who is accountable? Then future audits it will help internal inspection as per standard on quality control 1, and then external inspection as per other legal and regulatory requirements. Then we started with form, content and audit documentation, whereby we have seen that an experienced auditor should be able to understand NT, having no previous connection should be able to understand the NT of audit procedures, the audit evidences, significant matters, the conclusions of professional judgment. With respect to NT of audit procedures, identifying characteristics, who performed, who reviewed and date. And with respect to significant matters, the inconsistencies, how they were addressed, the discussions with the management, with whom and when. Simple, and it says that it depends upon the various factors like size, complexity, nature of audit procedures, identified risk of material statement, significance of audit evidence, nature of exceptions, and the methods and tools. And we have seen the examples, and we saw that superseded documents are not to be included. We don't want to confuse now. We want to have it in a good manner. not in a haphazard manner. So superseded documentation, rough calculations, previous copy of documentations with typographic errors, these will not be included. However, your contract copies or any document of continuing significance, they will form. Now, next topic is timely preparation, which is a very, very important topic from point of view of true and false, your MCQs, your case scenario, your descriptive questions. So we'll take here for 10 minutes. And after that, we'll be doing this timely preparation. And Janvi, your query is, ma'am, materiality is also an example of documentation. See, you as an auditor, as per SC 320, the auditor needs to maintain a documentation of how he decided materiality, how he decided performance materiality, and in case of any revision, what is the reason. So yes, documenting that calculations, documenting the professional judgment that he applied by using benchmark, by applying while applying the percentages, all that is also to be documented. And whatever audit has been done, documentation is required, be the audit is done for a large organization or a small organization. Why? Because see, if anyone asks an auditor, what work has you done? So orally, if he says that I have done this, this and this, yeah, my team has done this, this and this, so it won't be, reliable. But when he shows the audit documentation, that is a proper evidence that he performed and he planned and performed the audit as per the essays. Okay? So, Meena, yes, it is possible to implement all the steps in audit planning practically, because practically this happens. Risk assessment procedures are done, overall audit strategy is established, then planning is done, then audit procedures are performed, and then the reporting takes place. Okay? So all the queries have been resolved. Keep on posting your queries, and after 10 minutes we'll meet. So students, I hope you all are back. Student, during the break, I just looked at your queries, and I saw that with respect to what an experienced auditor is, there are number of queries. So I'll just explain it to you with the help of the definition of experienced auditor, which is given in essay 230. Okay? So before starting the timely completion topic, I'll just explain this to you. See, an experienced auditor. See, who can be auditor? We know chartered accountant is required. So an individual who has practical experience and reasonable understanding of, he is having the practical experience and he is having a reasonable understanding of what, how the audit processes are, what the audit processes are, how they work, the standards on auditing, the applicable legal and regulatory requirements, the business environment in which the entity operates. For example, XYZ Limited in our example was a company which manufactured, say, toys. So the person should know how the entity is, what is the business environment of that entity. He should have an understanding of auditing and financing reporting issues relevant to the toys industry, the entities industry. So though he has never done the audit of XYZ Limited, but he has practical experience of conducting the audit. He has reasonable understanding of the audit processes, the standards, the applicable legal and regulatory requirements. For example, suppose we are conducting, I have maintained the audit documentation of a bank. So Banking Regulation Act, he must be knowing. Banking Regulation Act 1949. In case of Companies Act 2013, the business environment in which the entity operates and auditing and financial reporting issues relevant to the entity's industry. So that means he is having an experience of all this, though he has no previous connection with that particular client. So that such a person should be able to understand your audit documentation, right? And Divya, you were asking me that, ma'am, whether for small businesses also audit documentation is to be maintained, first of all, and Ramakrishna also, there was a query that who has to keep audit evidences or documentation. See, whatever we are discussing from the point of view of the auditor. Auditor has to plan and perform now. He is performing the audit procedures. He is collecting the the audit evidences. He is concluding. So he will maintain documentation, and you will see that this documentation which the auditor is maintaining as per SC 230 is the property of the auditor. So the client will not maintain this. Client will maintain the accounting system, the internal control, the accounting policies. This part we are discussing about the auditor's work. So auditor will do that. And yes, Divya, even if a small company's audit has been done, so audit documentation is to be maintained. Okay? Why? Because for any audit, planning is required. Na? And this adds an evidence of your planning and your that everything was planned and performed as per SA. And some or the other procedures, even in case of a small company, the auditor will be performing. So he will maintain a documentation because this essay is applicable on the statutory audit of the company. So whatever audit, be it a big company, a small company, or in any legal form, NGO, anything, this will be applicable. Okay? So I hope the queries. Meena is saying, ma'am, planning should also include changes that may occur in statutory law, government rule, natural calamities. Yes, obviously. We have seen, I gave you example of in planning that suppose a forecast is there that a cyclone will come in a particular area where the auditor has to conduct the audit. So we will definitely change his plan. And in program, I gave you an example that suppose the GST rate of the mobile sale on the sale of mobile has changed. So you need to change the audit program accordingly. I hope now everybody's query has been solved. Okay? So let us now go to the next topic, which is the auditor asks now, Chika, I have understood everything. Please tell me what is the timing of such preparation of audit documentation. So this essay says, see, you need to maintain this documentation on a timely basis, side by side, as in when you are performing the audit procedures, you are obtaining the audit evidences, just maintain a documentation on a timely basis. Okay. Why? Auditor asked. Essay said that, see, it will enhance the quality. Obviously, now, when you are planning, you are documenting it. And when you are performing the audit procedures, you are documenting each and every paper. So it often happens that when we are just scrolling the papers, that we have done so far, we may find some mistake, or we may think that, I need to do some more work. So, and this is not possible if we document later on, after the audit has been completed. Now I'll document. No. Why? Because after the audit has been completed, I cannot do any new audit procedure, right? So the quality will increase. And what will increase? The effectiveness of review or evaluation. If the audit documentation is periodically reviewed by the engagement partner. So obviously, if everything has been documented side by side and he's reviewing also everything, it is obvious now there will be effective review, there will be a qualitative review, and the quality of the entire audit will increase. Okay? On the other hand, if after the audit report has been signed, if after that audit documentation is maintained, then chances are there that it is less accurate. Suppose take situation 1, whereby me and my team, we are conducting the audit of XYZ Limited, and we are maintaining the documentation side by side that today we have checked all the purchases done. These were the identifying characteristics of the purchases, and this particular purchase was with respect to a related party. Fine. So the engagement partner, I reviewed the documentation and I was like, this transaction is with a related party, do more procedures on this. And accordingly, plan was further developed and revised. And accordingly, further audit procedures were done with respect to that particular transaction. First is this scenario. And second is, after everything has been done, on the date of signing of the audit report, I start compiling my audit documentation. Now tell me, which situation is better? Obviously the first one, because their additional procedures can be performed, their changes can be done, discussions with management can be done. But once the auditor's report has been signed, no additional audit procedures you can do. Why? Because you have given your opinion. Now you cannot say anything. Now you cannot perform the new audit procedures as such, right? So SA 230 says prepare it on a timely basis because it will improve the quality, the effectiveness of review and evaluation of the audit work. And if you do it after the audit report, now chances are there your documentation will be less accurate. Clear? A very simple topic. Now, the next topic related to this only is your audit file. Is audit file. A very important topic for MCQs, for case scenarios, for true false, for descriptive, and a very simple topic also. What is an audit file? The definition of audit file, audit documentation and experienced auditor is given where in SA 230. So what is an audit file? Tell me, suppose this is my laptop. ठीक है? This is the screen and the purchases related to XYZ Limited. I will write it. यहाँ पे there is a folder which has purchases of XYZ Limited. Then I am having a folder which has sales of ABC Limited. Then another folder which has assets of ABC Limited. Then another folder. This has details of XYZ. This has details of MNO. See, is this a way to maintain the documentation? Documentation can be in your box file, paper form, or it can be in the form of your soft copies also. Okay? It can be in the form of soft copies also, that is on your system. So if I tell you that, okay, suppose the article assistant needs to refer to some documentation and I tell them, see on my desktop, na, the papers are there with respect to purchases. This is better. Or let me take you through another example where I am having a folder of XYZ, I am having a folder of ABC, and in that all purchases, all sales, all assets, everything related to XYZ, everything related to ABC in another folder, everything related to MNO another folder. What are these XYZ, ABC, MNO? These are my clients. So I have made one or more folders related to a specific engagement. Tell me which situation is better, A or B? Which situation is better? Which situation is better? I want answers, please. Here, my documents are there. I have maintained an audit documentation, but in a haphazard way. And here, I have maintained one or more folders. Maybe this is the folder for XYZ. This is also the folder for XYZ. This has all the working, and this has all the final papers. So one or more folders, or any storage media. Like I can have box files or any kind of files, or I can have any other storage media in physical, electronic form or electronic form, which contains the record that comprise the documentation of a specific engagement. What is that? That is called audit file. So students are saying that, ma'am, Shrishti is saying folder B is better, the B scenario is better, and Prajakta is also saying that folder of a particular entity is better. So SA 230 says that, listen auditor, don't do this in a haphazard way. Do one thing, you maintain an audit file. Now what is audit file? Yes, I've got answers. Khushi, Rajiv, Anushka, Aditi, Manish, Abhishek, everyone is saying B. Mohammed, Suwati, Tanushi, Janvi, Mohadeen, everyone, Shrishti, everyone is saying that B is better. So 230 says, please maintain the documentation in an audit file. Now, what is an audit file? Students, how to remember this definition? See, I have made two folders of XYZ Limited. This is for working, this is for final. I can say that one or more folders or other storage media. Folders say, I mean, I can have box files also, right, whereby the data can be kept. I can have box files or other storage media. It can be in pen drive, it can be in the form of CD, in physical or electronic form. Physical is what? Your papers, where you have documented it in box files, the thick files, containing the record that comprise the audit documentation of a specific engagement. A very important term. See, a specific related to a particular engagement, then it will be in an organized manner, and that is called an audit file. That is called an audit file. And Anurag is saying, ma'am, can the auditor be engaged in multiple engagements at a time? Yes, there is a limit which you will be doing in chapter number 10, company audit. There is an audit firm. With respect to each individual partner, they can take the audits up to a certain limit. Okay? So in my case, suppose there are 3 clients. So don't put the documentation of all the clients in one file and say, I have maintained a documentation. No, this is not the way. Why? If you remember, we have seen that an experienced auditor having no previous connection, he should be able to understand. Now, if you give him CH-3 this laptop and tell him, okay, review, do it yourself and find out the documents and then review. That is not possible. Na? So maintain it properly. Like a professional, you are a professional. So one or more folders or other storage media. Other storage media is your pen drive or CD in physical or electronic form containing the record of that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. So the word specific engagement is important here. Clear? I hope you'll be able to learn the definition. One or more folder or other storage media. I gave you example of pen drive, CD. In what form? Physical or electronic. What does it contain? Containing the record that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. Specific engagement is a particular client for a particular year. You may have in this, suppose XYZ. In XYZ, you may have financial year 2021, 19, 20 separate folders like these. Obviously, Vidam, Manoj, there is no hard and fast rule as such that in this, the name of the folder should be this or only these folders are allowed. The main gist, the crux is that it should be in an organized way. Don't keep it in a haphazard way that purchases ka alag ja raha hai, sales ka alag ja raha hai, and you don't know where the papers exactly are. Okay? So now the next question is, the auditor says, I have understood what is an audit file. Please tell me, what is the time period under which I need to maintain it? So first of all, SA 230 had said, please maintain it in a timely basis. Then it says that Standard on Quality Control 1 says that the audit firm should have the policies and procedures for preparing the audit documentation in a timely basis. What does that mean? That every CA firm should have the guidelines, internal policies and procedures that within this time you need to maintain the audit file. And there is a period which has been given. It says after the date of audit report. Like if your audit report has been signed here, then with not more than 60 days, it says that, see, you have done all the documentation and we understand that it is a tedious process to arrange them because you need to, systematically arrange the data. You need to say sign where initials are not done. You need to collect the data from your engagement team and everything because there are a number of article assistants. They must be having their files and then you will collect all the data. Na? So it says that once you sign the audit report, now after the date of audit report, 60 days maximum time period is given to you. For what? You can compile your audit file. Clear? You can compile your audit file. What is meant by compiling? You are collecting the data from your team, or suppose any document is to be taken from the management, you are taking that. You are systematically arranging that data. You are signing where the signs were left. If you remember in audit program, you need to put the initials, who reviewed, what is the date. So if anything is left, you can do that. Maximum time period is 60 days. But it says, auditor, listen, during these 60 days, you cannot perform any new audit procedure. New audit procedure cannot be performed, and only administrative nature of work, like arranging the data, that is sorting, collating the data, that is collecting, signing of the checklist. Suppose you have forgot to put some tick marks or initials, or removing the superseded documents, do that. But no new additional audit procedure. Why? Because Mr. Auditor, you have already signed the audit report. Now you cannot perform any new audit procedures, only the administrative kind of changes. Clear? One more concept is there. It says, now auditor says, ठीक है, I understood that after signing the audit report, not more than 60 days, within 60 days, I have to compile, and during that 60 days also, no new audit procedure, only changes of administrative work. But please also tell me till when should I keep this audit documentation. So SQC 1 says, the audit firm should have internal policies and procedures with respect to retention of this audit file. The audit firm need to keep this audit file for a period, for some period. And what is that period? It should be no shorter than 7 years from the date of audit report. That means once the audit report was signed, till 7 years from that date, you will retain this file. Why? Because it might happen that, say, in 2017 or 18, you performed certain audit, and now you have been asked, you have been, a charge of negligence has been put against the audit firm by the client. Suppose 2017 the audit was done. Now a fraud has come out and it has been identified by SEBI. The client says that the auditor did not perform the audit. They did not perform the audit as per the standards. So as we have seen that this audit documentation acts as an evidence that I have done all the work properly. I have planned and performed the work as per SA legal and regulatory requirements. This is the basis of my conclusions. So I, as an auditor, I have fulfilled all my responsibility. So in order to, in case you discard the documentation, how will you prove? So you need to maintain it up to 7 years from the date of the auditor's report. Manoj, this is the time period that has been given. There is no longer or shorter period that has been given by law. With respect to maintaining the books of accounts by the companies, the time period has been given under Companies Act. But with respect to retention of the audit documentation by the auditor, SA 230 and Standard on Quality Control 1, it says that the period is no shorter than 7 years from the date of the. Uske baad you want to keep, you can keep it. But at least 7 years, so you should keep it. ठीक है? Aditi is saying, ma'am, what if the company comes to know about a fraud after the date of audit report? See, there are essays on this, like subsequent event is there, SA 560, which we'll be doing in this chapter. Then your query will be resolved. The auditor has to keep the document. हाँ, Mohammed Hamza, he's saying that with respect to all the clients, yes, with respect to all the clients, the auditor has to maintain a documentation. And he needs to mandatorily keep it for at least 7 years. And he's saying that it will be hard for an auditor to maintain all the documentation, but there is nothing like that. When you are doing your work, you are getting the fees, you can always keep the documents, and this will help you only in case further any charge of negligence is charged against the company, the auditor. It will help the audit firm only. Sakshi, please repeat your query. I didn't get your query. Okay. So what was the topic? A very important topic, which says the topic was timely completion of audit file, है ना? Timely preparation. So SA 230 says that it should be on a timely basis. Why? Because quality will increase, effectiveness of the review of the evaluation of audit work will increase, and if you are preparing it later on after the audit report, then there are chances that it will be less accurate. Okay? Then what is audit file? One or more folders or other storage media in physical or electronic form containing a record that comprise the audit documentation of a specific engagement. Then how to assemble? First of all, assemble it in a timely manner. And SQC 1 says that the audit firm needs to have the policies and procedures, whereby it is telling the entire staff that within such time period you need to compile the audit file. And as per SQC 1, it is not more than 60 days from the date of the auditor's report, and only administrative kind of changes can be made and no new audit procedure can be done. Okay? And it needs to be maintained for 7 years. Okay? And that's it, 7 years from the date of the auditor's report. I'll just take you through the module, then chapter number 2, that topic was left, I'll complete that. Okay? Now students are making their own MCQs and asking me the questions, ma'am, what if after 7 years this happen or that happens? Just a minute. So form, content and extent. First of all, let us just discuss this timely preparation, then I'll take you through form, content. See, timely preparation, he shall prepare it on a timely basis, and it will help to enhance the quality, the effectiveness of review and evaluation. And after the audit work has been performed, the documentation, if you prepare, it will be less accurate. Okay? Then what is an audit file? One or more folders, other storage media in physical, electronic form containing the record that comprise the audit documentation of a specific engagement. A very important definition and topic with respect to MCQ, case scenario, true, false or descriptive. Okay? Then let us just quickly do this. While auditing the books of accounts of Very Careful Limited for the financial year this, a team member was of the view that with regard to audit of the company, no relation between audit file and audit documentation. Explain the relationship. It says, audit file may be defined as one or more folders, other storage media containing the records that comprise the audit documentation. The auditor shall assemble the audit documentation file and complete the administrative process of assembling the file on a timely basis after the date of the auditor's report. Now, what is that timely basis? SQC 1, first of all, it says on timely basis, and SQC 1 says it requires the firm to establish policies and procedures for timely completion, and appropriate time limit within which to complete the assembly. See, we are just doing assembly is ordinarily not more than 60 days after the date of the auditor's report. The completion of the assembly of audit file after the date of the audit report is an administrative. What is meant by administrative? The dictionary meaning is mechanical. Okay? That is, it does not involve performance of new audit procedures. Changes may, however, be made be administrative in nature. This is also, students, very important. What all changes can be made? See, deleting, discarding is deleting, superseded, taken place over by new documents. ठीक है? Place over. Example, rough calculations या कोई typographical error is there. So sorting is what? Arranging systematically. Arranging systematically. ठीक है? And collating is what? Collecting. Cross, what happened? Just a minute. Cross referencing. ठीक है? Cross referencing, if you remember in audit program, you need to write the pages of the working papers. So cross referencing. Signing off, that is, you are signing on the completion checklist. Suppose you have forgot to take, so do that. Documenting audit evidence that the auditor, that is what? Engagement partner, has discussed and agreed with relevant members, the engagement team, before the date of the audit reports. That everyone in the team agrees. Relevant members is the key members. Now it talks about retention period. So it says the auditor shall not delete or discard audit documentation of any nature. Any document you will not delete before its retention period. Now SQC 1 says that the firm to establish policies and procedure for retention. Students, how to learn? See, if you remember, you have seen here that firms to establish policies and procedure for timely completion. Same, firm to establish policies and procedures for retention of our engagement documentation. And this is no shorter than 7 years from the date of the auditor's report or the date of the group auditor's report. Suppose, what is group? Suppose with respect to holding company, my firm is conducting the audit. With respect to branches, some other firm is conducting the audit. So a group audit report will be issued now. So that is why the name group auditor's report is given. Okay? Quickly send me the queries that you have. I'll stop here. I'll revise the entire chapter in 5 minutes and then we'll complete the topic which was left in chapter number 2. Okay? Meanwhile, I'll just answer your queries. Just 5 minutes. Students, client will not maintain documentation. Client has the responsibility. In my very first lecture, I told you that client has the responsibility with respect to what? With respect to your maintenance of your accounting system, implementation of accounting policies, setting, implementing, designing, controlling the internal control. This work has been performed by whom? By auditor. This audit evidences, audit procedures, conclusions have been drawn by whom? Auditor. So auditor will maintain it. And in order to resolve this query, I'll just show you quickly. See, for all those who are having this query, just go through this. Ownership. Audit documentation is the property of the auditor. This we'll be doing in detail in the next class, but it is the property of the auditor. So it is my property, I am the auditor, I'll maintain it. I'll not ask the client to maintain it and then I'll say that it is my property. Hana? So client will not maintain it. Related party, it means suppose Mr. X is the director of the company and Mrs. X is director in another company. Suppose I am my company, that company, Mr. X company is having a transaction with the company in company of Mrs. X. Then these are related party. And what actually a related party will be doing, SA 550 will be covering in this chapter, then you will see. And Nakul, collating is collecting. Ramakrishna is asking who has to maintain audit file? Auditor. Okay? Second is, his second question is, Acha, theek hai. Ramakrishna is saying, if there has been change of the auditor, how will the new auditor get the documentation? We will be doing in this chapter essay 510, initial audit, opening balances, initial audit engagement. There you will see how to deal with it. ठीक है? Bhuvaneshwari client will not maintain audit documentation. Can we make changes in nature of work after audit report? Sakshi, we cannot see. Only the administrative kind of change work can be done. For example, arranging the papers, they are not serially numbered, you are serially numbering them. In the audit program, you have not written the page numbers, you do that. But no new work. How can you change the nature of work? Why? Because you have already signed the audit report. Na? That 60-day period is given after the signing of the audit report. So no new procedure, only the administrative kind of work, and the examples are given which are very important. Manoj, no, auditor cannot modify audit documentation after the assembly. See, 60 days period has been given to you, and practically within 60 days, the assembly part is complete. Okay? Nakul, see, if you are, suppose, see, earlier files were maintained in paper form. Okay? However, nowadays, everything is computerized. So you may keep the documents in electronic form. However, suppose your client is having manual accounts, then you will obviously have the manual box files. Your client is highly computerized, some software, highly technical softwares are being used. You as an auditor, you are making use of Excel sheets, you are making use of some softwares to do the audit, then it will be in electronic form. Anushka, you were saying, ma'am, when audit files are lost or device containing the file is lost, what should I do? This generally never happens. As such, we always have a backup. Yash, see, Yash is saying, ma'am, what would take, if the auditor would not take these documents for a minimum of 7 years, what would happen? See, as such, anything will not happen. See, these are the requirements, and we as the auditor, when we are conducting the audit, we need to follow our standards on auditing. Further, if we maintain the documentation, as I've told you, suppose any charge of negligence is raised against the company, then it will help the audit firm only. Vanshika is saying, ma'am, any report is to be filed to some other authority also. See, this report, we are conducting the audit for the management, for the client. Like they have hired us, we are conducting the audit for them. And with respect to listed companies, you will see that such reports form part of the financial annual reports, and these are properly shown on the websites, and they are given to the shareholders also. Further, in case of frauds, there are certain reporting requirements to the central government, and other provisions are there, which we'll be discussing later on. Okay? So, why 7 years and everything? See, students, this is the law, and the time period has been given. So, we need to follow that. With respect to fraud of a company, after the audit report, as I've told you, SA 560 and we'll be doing. Okay? So, with this, we have completed today's lecture. Let me just quickly revise. We started with definition of essay, audit documentation in essay 230. Then we discussed the objectives, that is basis of conclusion and basis of that it was planned and performed. And this is the nature of providing evidence also. Three purposes for engagement team. That is, it helps in what? Planning and performing, in DSR, direction supervision review, and in seeing who is accountable. Then in future audits and records of continuing significance. I'm picking up the keywords and I want you to learn like this only. Pick up the keywords and learn. And always learn in English so that you are able to write in the exam, because your papers, whoever are giving these exams in English, so try to learn in the language in which you have to write. Then SQC 1K according internal inspection and review and external inspection as per your legal regulatory requirement. Then we saw that form, content and extent, experienced auditor, no previous connection, he should be able to understand NT of audit procedures, the evidence is significant matters, the conclusions and the professional judgment. These are the keywords, right? With respect to NT of audit procedures, identifying characteristics, who performed, date, who reviewed, date. With respect to significant matters, the discussions, the natures, with whom and the date. In case of inconsistency, how you addressed. However, the form, content and extent depends upon size, complexity, the audit procedures, the identified risk of material misstatement, the significance of audit evidence, nature and extent of exceptions, methods and methodology and tools. Examples you all know. It will include entities records like your documents and agreements and all. However, superseded documentation, rough calculations, typographical errors, papers that needs to be removed will not come here. Timely preparation we have seen. Timely basis पे होना चाहिए. Why? It will enhance the quality, effectiveness. और बाद में करते हो तो it will be less accurate. Audit file is what? One or more folders or other storage medium, right? And containing the records that comprise the audit documentation for specific engagement. Assembly of the audit file, 60, not more than 60 days, and you need to maintain it up to 7 years. And what administrative kind of changes can be made, very important, that we have done. So we have done this chapter, and Ramakrishna is saying that because why 7 years time period is there, because it is given in income tax. Like students see, for this subject, whatever knowledge is required, I am giving that knowledge to you. Later on, when you study in your income tax, in your Companies Act, you can always correlate and learn, right? Now, first of all, please message me whether you are able to understand the topic that we have come to done today. And student, this time we'll be doing this topic in detail. And as I've told you, there are 9 essays, and it is a very, very, very important subject. Sorry, chapter. You may get a case scenario out of any of the essays in this. Okay? Along with the keywords, Shruti, obviously you need to write the connecting words. For example, I told you what is the definition of audit documentation. Shruti is saying, can we write only the keywords in the exam? I told you audit documentation is, in order to learn, I told you this is the way. Okay? I cannot make this chart in the paper. I will have to use the connecting words. What are the connecting words? It is a record of. This is the technique to learn. कि procedures करते हैं, उससे we get audit evidence, उससे we get conclusions. But how to write audit as per essay 230? Audit documentation is these are what connecting words now. Record of audit procedures, and I told you audit procedures are always performed. So, record of audit procedures performed. Audit evidences are always what? Obtained. So, audit evidence obtained and conclusions the auditor reached. Now, I will not ask you to learn this and or is. These are the connecting words which should come automatically. So, as per essay 230, audit documentation is a record of. Now, you have in your mind a picture of this diagram. So, you can always connect it. Audit procedures performed, comma, audit evidence obtained, and the conclusions the auditor reached. ठीक है. So now back to our chapter number 2 for just 5 minutes. Only a 5-minute topic is left on which I have given a question also. Topic is additional consideration in case of initial audit engagement. Right? Additional consideration in case of initial audit engagement. I'm happy that you people are saying, ma'am, clearly understood, excellent teaching we have witnessed today. I'm so happy to see that. All your messages, motivate us to improve and to see where we can, do better. So now on page number we were doing, the topic is related to this topic. Audit planning is a continuous process, and if you remember, we have seen that it is not a discrete, that is separate phase of audit, but rather a continual and iterative process where that often begins after the completion of previous audit and continues until the completion of the current year auditing engagement. This we have done. This topic was left. What is the additional consideration in case of initial audit engagement? So, just 5 minutes topic. Students, see, now just go back to chapter number 2. For the time being, we are not doing chapter number 3 now. Just a small topic of chapter number 2, which is audit strategy, audit planning, and audit program. So it says we have done that planning is a continuous process in case of recurring audits. Recurring is you were the auditor last year also and you are the auditor this year also. So recurring audit. And in that case, it says that planning is not a discrete phase of audit, but rather a continual and iterative process which begins shortly after the or in connection with the completion of the previous year audit and continues until the completion of the current year audit engagement. ठीक है? उसमें तो समझ आता है कि last year जब audit when it got finished, we started planning then and there only that अच्छा next year we'll be doing like that. We'll be checking the related party transaction or the traveling bills in detail. ठीक है? Now the next topic is additional consideration in case of initial audit engagement. So this says, see, as per SC 300, it says that the purpose and the objective of planning will be same. Obviously, even if you are, first of all, what is meant by initial audit engagement? See, we'll be covering this in detail in this chapter in SA 510. Okay? But what is the definition? If the financial statements of prior period were not audited, last year audit was not conducted, the client was not required to get the accounts audited, or financial statements of prior period were audited by predecessor auditor. Predecessor means previous auditor. Okay? What does that mean? What is an initial audit engagement? It says that suppose last year you were not the auditor. So there can be two cases. Either last year audit was not conducted. Okay? And second can be last year audit was conducted but you did not conduct the audit. That is, it was conducted by some predecessor auditor, that is previous auditor. So SC 300 says that so far as planning is concerned, the purpose and objective of planning in case of initial audit engagement will be same. Obviously, however, since auditor is not having any previous connection with this audit now, he may have to expand his audit procedures. Jitna audit procedures he is performing in recurring audit, usse thoda sa extra, something extra the auditor might have to do. What? So it says, first of all, it says that SA 510 में you will see, first of all, ठीक है. Secondly, it says that as per SA 220, the auditor will have to see whether he should accept the client relationship or not. You have done this in your chapter number 1, where integrity of the client will be seen. The auditor will see whether his team meets the ethical requirements, including independence or not, right? So this is the first point as per your module. And what is the second point? In this case, where the audit was conducted by a predecessor auditor, the auditor will communicate with the predecessor auditor to see if this predecessor auditor has been changed and our auditor in question has been appointed, whether that is per relevant ethical requirements or not. ऐसा तो नहीं है उसको before the expiry of his term हटा दिया गया है. It should be as per the relevant ethical requirement. Our auditor in question will discuss with the previous auditor that auditor, please tell me why you were removed from the office, whether you resigned or your tenure was over, and accordingly our auditor in question, he will accordingly apply his professional judgment and communicate, right? See, a very small topic, but it is an important topic. I left it by mistake, and I hope Khushi or Divya reminded me of this topic. Thank you for reminding me this topic, students. Okay. So what are the additional considerations? It says, as per SA 300, planning and audit of financial statement. See, for all those students who are saying, ma'am, whether we need to learn the names of the SA, students, first of all, I'm trying that you learn these by heart in the class itself. And secondly, see, when you write the answer like this, as per SA 300, and then in inverted commas, the name of the essays, the presentation itself is of a professional level, right? So try to learn. In fact, you have to learn. The auditor shall undertake the following activities prior to starting an initial audit. What is an initial audit? Abhi, you need not worry, though I have told you that financial statement of prior period were not audited. And financial statement of the prior period were audited by predecessor auditor. So what will auditor do? He'll perform the procedures as per SA 220. You have done this in your chapter number 1 relating to integrity of the client, the relevant ethical requirements of the audit firm and the independence. And then he'll communicate with the predecessor. What is meant by predecessor is previous or preceding. जो उससे पहले काम कर रहा था. Where, in order to see where there has been a change of auditors in compliance with relevant ethical requirements. So this was the topic that was left. Right? So now we have completed this topic. Apart from this, we haven't left anything. I'll just look at the query. Sri Vignesh, I can't understand. You understood the logic. Sri Vignesh, I cannot understand which question number 11 you are saying. As a students, I expect that with respect to chapter number 2, the MCQs, the case scenario, the descriptive question, the key pointers in the form of PPT that I have given to you, you have gone through them, and you will be able to answer those questions correctly, I assure you. But you need to listen to these lectures properly, and you need to read the ICAI module once, at least word by word. Then you can learn following your techniques. But please don't leave any of the topics from the module. Why? Because say, as I told you in chapter number 3, we have 9 standards. So suppose you left one of the standards and your case scenario came out of that standard only, right? Because these are not tough. At least after the class is completed, please go through the topic that we have completed. Today we have not completed much. because it is important. So I thought of keeping the speed slow, and we'll be doing this chapter in detail. Schedule after 31st will be shared shortly. And students, thank you so much for the extra 10 minutes and your patient listening. Keep on posting on your queries and whether you are able to understand the chapter number 2 and the chapter number 3 we have done so far. Please read the chapter from the module that we have covered. And for chapter number 2, please practice the questions that have been given to you. And do post all the queries related to any of the chapters. I'll take it at the end of the lecture, right? So with this, ma'am, chapter 3 will be allotted more lectures than 3 as it is a lengthy chapter. Yes, Shrishti, it will be allotted. It has been allotted more chapters, more classes. Arihant, I have no answer to this question. I told you students start making MCQs, case scenarios themselves, and which are not practically, you know. Arihant is saying, ma'am, what if, where is that question? What if the predecessor auditor died? So, right? So with this, and hoping that you will read, you will go through the lecture, the module and chapter number 2, please do the descriptive questions, MCQs and case scenario, and do post your queries, right? So thank you and good night and bye-bye.